'cause I see the born of no return. It's just ahead now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday again. It's already middle of December. It's Tuesday, December 16th, 2014. I was warning all the fellows in the chat room to get ready because next week my pre-show music mix is going to be all Christmas carols. So, get ready for it. Get ready for some Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and all that good old stuff. My name is Gary Hendershot. You're listening to Wide Awake News on the Rents Radio Network. It's 8:08 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States, FEMA Region 3. And, it's cold and rainy outside here in Northern Virginia, just south of Ground Zero. Well, let's get into it. It's been kind of an eventful week in the news. As a matter of fact, I'm afraid I've got more of a pile of articles here to get through than I'm going to be able to do. And unfortunately, very little of it is good news. Let's see here. Heroic victims of Sydney Cafe terrorist siege, shielded pregnant friend, challenged terrorist. Yeah, for those of you in the United States who think crazed gunmen are unique here in the United States, guess again. Now, some years ago, Australia passed a rather heinous gun reform law. I mean, average citizens in Australia are very restricted as far as their ownership of firearms goes, but apparently a wacko in Australia, regardless of their very draconian gun laws, managed to get a gun and took hostages in a cafe in the Sydney business district. Now, people who were witnesses to this criminal activity, a lot are calling it terrorists because, the guy who committed this crime just happened to be, one of them whacked out bearded Muslims. But the key word is whacked out, okay? This guy was a wacko. And, wackos are wackos regardless of, whether they dance the hokey pokey to the left or dance the hokey pokey to the right. And this guy, I think, probably qualifies as a wacko. But a lot of people are saying that the two who were killed in this incident died heroically. And they deserve special mention. Now, I want you to pay attention to the fact that I'm not even going to mention the name of the wacko, because he is a wacko, and wackos should not be given their 10 minutes of fame. They don't deserve it. But these two people, a 38-year-old woman named Katrina Dawson, who just happened to be what we would refer to as an attorney. In Australia, they refer to her as a barrister. And the fellow pictured next to her, and if those watching this on the video feed, right over my shoulder, this fellow's name is Tory Johnson. He was the manager of the little cafe where this went down. He's 34 years old. These two people stand out in the minds of many who were witnesses to this tragedy as acting in a heroic manner. It appears that Katrina Dawson put herself between the gunman and a pregnant friend, died protecting her pregnant friend. And the manager of the little cafe, this 34-year-old fellow named Torrey Johnson, made a run at the gunman, tried to take him down, grabbed hold of the weapon, and apparently was shot in the process. That according to witnesses on the scene. Apparently 4 other people were injured in what turned out to be a 16-hour standoff. Eventually, it looks like there were 3 dead, 4 were injured. Reports have also emerged that, tearful Australians have since laid piles of flowers out for the victims. A video has emerged from the scene of the horrifying incident filmed by the gunman, who had been granted bail despite links to previous murder. The fellow who committed these crimes, he has a long criminal record. Here in the United States, there's no way this fellow with his criminal past would have been allowed to legally own a firearm. And of course, in Australia, with their anti-gun legislation being a lot tougher than it is here in the U.S., in theory, this fellow never should have had a weapon. Just goes to show you that regardless of how strict your laws are, no matter how many signs you put up saying this is a gun-free zone, wackos will find a way, and they prefer gun-free zones because that's like putting out a sign saying only victims here. Tragedy in Australia. Heart goes out to the people who've lost friends and relatives. There was another rather dismal event that happened in Pakistan. Now, our press, the Western press, is blaming this assault on Taliban. Taliban is kind of a convenient enemy. They're it's like everything else. Nobody really knows, and I don't think looking at it, I'm trying to figure out what an assault like this would do to benefit the Taliban in their position. They're obviously trying to regain the hearts and minds of the locals so that they can return to power. But the way this went down, it seems a gunman in Peshawar entered a school and started shooting at random. One terrorist blew himself up in a classroom containing 60 children. A teacher was set on fire in front of pupils, with the children forced to watch. Insurgents had inside information before carrying out a well-planned attack. These are the headlines out of the Daily Mail. Taliban accepted responsibility for the attack, claiming it was just a trailer. Now, I'm sorry, just a trailer. It's like a movie trailer. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what the heck Taliban has to gain from something like this. Experts claim the attack could be due to Malala I'm going to butcher this person's last name. Yousafzai winning a Nobel Prize. Apparently this person won a Nobel Prize for pushing for the rights of women in Pakistan. David Cameron, who cares what he thinks, but David Cameron described today's events as dark day for humanity. Afghan Taliban criticized killing of innocent children as against principles. So you got one group of Taliban saying, yeah, we did it, and this is just a trailer. We're going to do more. And you got, the Taliban who used to be in charge in Afghanistan shaking their heads saying, hey, man, that's not our way. And I tell you the truth, I don't know. I've heard rumors that this incident may have been carried out by, whatever Blackwater is calling themselves now. There's some conspiracy theorist types who say, this just reeks of a Blackwater operation. Well, I'm not sure a whole lot of those paid mercenaries that work for Z or Zi or whoever, whatever they're calling themselves this week. I'm not sure many of those guys would be walking into a classroom and blowing themselves up. That's not their style. They're looking for a paycheck. They're paid mercenaries. But it's still very difficult for me to point the finger and say this group did it or that group did it. Again, it looks like the act of absolute crazies. Certainly not the act of someone who wishes to regain the trust of the people that they hope to at some point lead. Again, you're going to have to consider the various theories on this one, and as always, make up your own damn mind. I'm still a little puzzled by it. Not sure who did it. All I know is that a bunch of kids who went to a school that was run by the Pakistan military are dead for no damn good reason. There seems to have been an assault going on against Russia. Duh. Ever since they kind of stood in the way of Western influences fully assimilating Ukraine, there seems to have been an awful lot of pushing and shoving. Some are even talking Cold War. They say that what is evolving here is a state of Cold War similar to what I grew up with in the 60s. I mean, back when I was growing up, we just assumed that at any moment, those Ruskies could drop a nuke on us, and we'd have about 20 minutes notice. We lived with that. We lived with that reality every day of our lives during the 60s and 70s, and all the way up until the point where the Soviet Union supposedly dissolved, at which point everybody breathed a sigh of relief saying, hallelujah, it looks like, cooler heads have prevailed and we're not going to have World War III. Yeah, right. But yeah, with the decline in oil prices. Now, as an average consumer, I'm sure you're very enthusiastic. I mean, have you seen the price? I filled my 1999 Mercury Marquis V8 that just loves high-test gasoline. I filled that bad boy up the other day. It cost me $2.53 a gallon. And I was giddy about it. I was giggling. That's the cheapest gas I've seen. Of course, doesn't seem that long ago. It was, less than $1 a gallon, but that's okay. When you've gotten used to paying $3.50 to $4 a gallon, and all of a sudden you can buy gas for less than $3 a gallon, as a consumer, you get all giddy and laughy about it. Man, that's cool. Man, that's the cheapest gas I've bought in a long time. But, if you take a big picture view of this, a lot of nations, nations in the Middle East, and in particular Russia, derive a large percentage of their foreign exchange, the money that they use to import goods from other nations, by exporting petroleum products. And Russia is one of the world's premier oil exporters. But with oil prices down and other economic pressures being put on Russia by the West, they've been excluded from a lot of the financial exchanges and so forth. Russia's economy has been hit. Well, it appears that in response, Russia has decided to do exactly the opposite of what our Federal Reserve did. When our Federal Reserve figured, the economy's in a recession, things are going south, let's reduce interest rates. And right now, the interbank interest rate, what big banks like Citibank pays the Federal Reserve to borrow large chunks of money, stands at around 0%, and it's been that low for about 6 years now. Well, the Russians for whatever reason, decided to raise their interest rates. And right now, interest rates in Russia are running, close to 16, 17%. The value of the Russian ruble is in the toilet right now. It dropped 20% just over the last few days. So it's like, one day you got $1 in your pocket, the next day you got 80 cents. You don't know what it's going to be tomorrow. Gee, will tomorrow my dollar only be worth 50 cents? That's what the people in Russia are thinking. Needless to say, this has spurred a buying spree in Russia. Russians are not sitting on their cash right now. If they got cash, they're out there spending it. They're buying hard commodities. So the moral of the story is retail business in Russia is brisk right now. Russians are spending money like, that money is going to be burned tomorrow, which it might. So car sales are up, luxury goods are up. Russians are out on a buying binge right now. They're spending money like crazy for good reason. Now, here again, because I'm an old geezer, I remember the Carter years. Yeah, I was alive when Jimmy Carter was president. And I remember when mortgages here in the United States, you go out to buy a home, and your mortgage was at what we would consider credit card rates today. I mean, you wanted to buy a house, you were going to pay 17, 18% APR on your mortgage. Inflation was so bad back in those days that as I was a manufacturer's rep at the time. I used to work for General Motors back during that period, and I could make a sale just by saying, hey, if you buy these parts today and put them on your shelf, within 3-4 months, they'll go up in value 20-30%. You ought to buy them now while they're cheap, because inflation was strong. That was actually a way of selling goods back in those days. People did not keep cash laying around. Inflation was so hard that $1 in the bank, if you let it sit there for a year, was going to be worth, if you're lucky, 75, 80 cents. Well, that's what's happening in Russia right now. The cash is not king in Russia right now. Now, if you look at the fundamentals, the interesting thing is the Russian ruble is not really that bad off. And a recovery of the ruble is probably a pretty strong possibility. But, you can't tell that to the guy who's got very little money. Maybe he's just average Joe Russian. Maybe he's managed to save up the equivalent of, $8,000-$10,000. He's feeling like, oh boy, I got me a little bit of a nest egg. I got me a little bit of cushion. If times get hard, I've got something to fall back on. Then all of a sudden, one day, he sees his nest egg that he worked so hard to put away dropping in value daily. And holy cow, if I sit on my nest egg for another year or two, it's only going to be worth half what it is now. I better get out there and buy that big screen TV or buy that new car that I've been putting off. And that's what happens in an economy that's suffering severe inflation. Expect that to come here within the next year, 18 months, because you want to stimulate the economy, get folks used to what we're seeing right now, stagnation, then all of a sudden smack them up alongside the head with the 2x4 of runaway inflation. See, the reason the economy is so slow here in the United States right now is because of you. You're sitting on that big wad of cash that you've been stashing, and you ain't getting out there and spending it on big, bad Christmas presents for all your friends and neighbors. You haven't bought a car, and well, let's see. For me, I got a 1979, so I got one car here that's old enough to vote. See, the bad economy is all my fault. I haven't been out there spending money like a drunken sailor, or in this case, a drunken Russian. Is the world in crisis mode? There is a clear trend of the northern EU countries actively working to repatriate foreign-held gold. Gee, They want their gold. Wonder why. Now, there is a story behind this. Back during World War II, Europe was, in an absolute daze. They'd been whacked up alongside the head with a big 2x4. And it seemed the right thing to do to put their financial reserves, their gold and silver reserves, where they would be safe. So a lot of these countries shipped their gold to safe havens like London and New York. We'll get into more on this story after the break. I expect to hear the music playing in my ear just about any moment now. And this is kind of a complicated story, so I don't think I can get it all in before... all right, where's that darn music? Maybe we're going to have a technical glitch and not get our break in. No, there it is. He did manage to find the tune, so I guess I'm going to have to slip out of here for a few minutes while the studio does some business. We'll be back with some more barking at the moon right after these important commercial announcements. Okay, and we're back from that blatantly commercial interruption to this evening's presentation. Let's see here. Germany, Holland, Belgium, and now Austria are all standing in line to repatriate their gold. Now, why, if you were Germany or Holland or Belgium or Austria, why would you ship all of your gold out of your country in the first place? Well, you got to think back, okay? You're a leader of a European nation that is just now recovering from the ravages of World War II. And it seems like just a generation before you'd have had World War I, and frankly, you were running scared. So you thought, well, gee, it seems like, we're going to have these wars here in Europe every 25, 30 years. Maybe it would be best if we ship our reserves to a safer place, a place that, hasn't been all tore up in wars the last couple times around, like maybe the United States, or maybe a little closer. Maybe we'll ship it to Great Britain, because, even though Britain suffered during World War II, they were not actually invaded, and so it seemed at the time like a pretty good idea. So a lot of these nations willingly shipped their gold reserves off to be held in vaults in the Federal Reserve and London. And of course, they assumed that if at some time they put their hand up and said, hey, we would really like to have our gold back, it would be there in safekeeping, just waiting for them. Yeah, right. They do not understand human nature very well. But people got a little bit suspicious. See, it used to be that if you were a big country and you were a trading partner of the United States, once or twice a year, or maybe once every 5 years, depending on what your deal was, there would be an accounting, okay? You bought so many Peugeots from France. You gave France your U.S. dollars in trade for those Peugeots. Now it's time to settle up. We would like to give you back your dollars, and we would like to have gold in exchange. Oh, and by the way, you got a whole bunch of our gold anyway, Mr. U.S., so while you're settling up with us on all these dollars that we've accumulated over the last trading period, why don't you also send us back, maybe 10, 15, 20% of what you were holding for us since World War II. Well, that went over kind of like a lead balloon while Richard Nixon was president. And Richard Nixon did what has since become known as closing the gold window. Basically, France was knocking at the door saying, hey, man, you've been holding my gold for about 30 years. I'd kind of like to have it back. And, oh, by the way, I got a couple of truckloads of these here dollars that we've been trading you. I'd kind of like to, trade those in for some gold, too. We'd like to have some hard currency in exchange. And Nixon said, not just no, but hell no. At the time, people were kind of stunned by that because it was always assumed that this is how nations did business. Yeah, we trust you, United States. We'll take your paper, but at some point, we assume we will be able to, just like at the casino, cash in our chips. We consider this paper to just be a marker. It's a promise to pay. And at some point, you promise to pay us in real, honest-to-God money for all this paper of yours that we have accumulated. Then Nixon closed the gold window, sent shock waves through the world economy. Holy cow! You mean all these dollars that we've been accumulating, we can't trade them for gold? Oh my God. Then Henry Kissinger, in the middle of the night, did some skullduggery and worked out a deal with the Middle East potentates that they would only sell their petroleum for U.S. dollars. So overnight, these sheiks of Arabia, fellows that we handpicked and made sure were in the right positions, told the European nations and other trading partners of the United States that, hey, if you want to buy our petroleum products, you're going to have to present us with dollars. We will not take gold. We will not take your local currency. We will not take nothing but U.S. dollars in exchange for our petroleum. Well, all of a sudden, the pressure was off, okay? Nations like France were no longer terribly concerned with converting their truckloads of U.S. dollars back into gold because, they weren't going to be able to spend the gold with the Arabs to buy oil anyway. The Arabs wanted U.S. dollars. And, what good is it to make a big deal out of getting their World War II stash back if, nobody's going to take it for anything anyway? So now the big rush was on to accumulate more and more and more U.S. dollars so that they could then use those dollars to buy energy resources from the Middle East. For a long time, that worked out really well for the United States, and the United States currency became the global reserve currency. Every nation in the world wanted to have a nice stash of U.S. dollars sitting around somewhere so that if they needed to buy some petroleum product from the Middle East, they could buy it because they had plenty of U.S. dollars on hand to make that transaction. Well, as oil is now kind of in the toilet, at last report, I think oil had gotten down below $60 a barrel. I heard, $58 a barrel today. That's pretty reasonable when you stop and think that, it was 110, 120 not too long ago. And some say it might get down as low as $40 a barrel. Some are saying that it might get down that low. We haven't seen oil that cheap in a long, long time. So oil is now cheap. You would think that that would make the dollar take a nosedive. But if you want a reserve currency, what are you going to choose? What are you going to choose? You want to take Chinese yuan? You want to take Russian rubles? The fact remains, even though the U.S. dollar ain't what it used to be compared to other currencies, it's stronger than... so if you want to put your money someplace that is as safe as you can get, the tendency is to still keep it in dollars. So, but then comes the gold. Now all of a sudden, there are entities like the Islamic State, ISIL, whatever they're calling themselves this week, who are rocking the boat a little bit. They will indeed sell oil from captured Iraqi and Syrian oil wells for gold. So now all of a sudden, nations that have a reserve of dollars already in good standing would kind of like to have their gold reserves back. So Germany, Holland, Belgium, and now Austria have put their hands up and said, hey, You've been holding our gold since World War II. It's about time we repatriate it and bring that gold back home, because who knows, at some point in the near future, we might need it. Besides that, we heard this funny story about a whole bunch of gold that had Fort Knox stamps all over it that got shipped over to China. And when they checked it out, they found out that it wasn't gold bars, it was tungsten bars with a candy coating of gold on the outside, leaving many to wonder whether the United States even has the gold at this point. We've heard the stories about Germany's attempted repatriation of their gold. Germany was not even permitted to come to New York and physically lay hands on their gold and count it to make sure that it was even still there. More on this story when we get back from this short break. Stand by now. All righty, we're back from that break, and we were talking about repatriation of gold. Now, for those of you who haven't actually seen, I don't know how let's see if I can get a good, okay, now that there, let's see if I can get it to focus. That there is a Swiss 20 franc piece. That's about 1/5 of an ounce of gold. This one here, this is a real popular one. This one, let's see if I can get it to focus on this. This is for the benefit of my video viewers here. This is a British sovereign. Yeah, that's a picture of Queen Elizabeth etched into that. That one's about 1/4 of an ounce. Now, coins of this type were popular as real money. I mean, people carried these in their pocket and used them to buy goods and services. These were intended to be used as money. Now, today, even at the depressed price that gold is bringing, this British sovereign at about 1/4 of an ounce is worth about, $350, $375, somewhere around the neighborhood. And something like a French rooster or a Swiss 20 franc piece, they're worth about, right at about 300, 315, somewhere in that neighborhood. So even at the fairly depressed price of gold right now, when you think about it, 1/4 of an ounce, you're carrying about $350 around in your pocket. It's a fairly light, fairly easy to carry around store of significant amount of money. I mean, a 400-ounce bar that is a common trade unit between nations. You're talking, $500,000 worth. It's about 400 at $1,200 an ounce. That's about $380,000. So 400-ounce package carries a fairly substantial amount of wealth. Needless to say, this is why gold has been kind of a standard trading unit for so long, for over 6,000 years. There's a 6,000-year human history of gold being used as money, real money, the kind of money that nations do business. Now, if you're the United States of America or you're Great Britain, you can print up anything you want and say, hey, this is currently the currency of the day. And by law, you will accept it for goods and services. Boom, end of conversation. But your law don't mean nothing to the guy across the pond. He looks at your piece of paper and he compares it to his piece of paper and he says, we need to be dealing in something tangible here. So nations, when they trade, usually do it in something that both recognize as being a store of value, and gold has traditionally been the mechanism. So no wonder these European nations, who long ago trusted England and the United States to hold their gold for them, would like to have it back. Today, London metals trader Andrew Maguire told King News that bullion banks are now panicking because the London gold hub is finally imploding. Maguire also warned that the bullion banks are not the only one who are panicking. The paper markets are nothing more than a mirage. But due to the massive leverage involved, let me translate that to English for you. See, Federal Reserve's got all this gold. They got gold from Germany, they got gold from Austria, they got gold from all these European nations. And they think about it for a while, and they say, well, you know, the gold's not really ours, but, you know, it's under our care. We can't actually sell that gold, but we can kind of lend it out to somebody we trust on the assumption that they're going to give it back to us, so that, you know, if the guy over across the pond decides they want it back, we'll have it to give. And, you know, under these fractional banking rules that we deal with, seeing as how we got, you know, an ounce of gold in our vaults, under fractional reserve, we can lend out 100 ounces. So that's what's been going on. Paper has been traded that in theory represents a certain value of gold, an ounce, 1,000 ounces, 10,000 ounces, whatever, for which no precious metal really exists. So you're an investor, and you don't want pile of these gold coins laying around. A contract with a trustworthy person or entity is good enough for you. So you've got a piece of paper here that says somewhere in some vault is 1,000 ounces of gold with your name on it. Sounds like a great thing, right? You don't have the trouble of, trying to buy a vault that some thief might break into and steal your gold. It's held for you very safely in a vault at a bank. The problem is that gold that you have a piece of paper contracting for might not actually have ever belonged to that bank. It might be gold that actually belonged to Germany or Austria or somebody else. You just really have a piece of paper that promises that at some point maybe you'll get some gold. That's what's happened. Now, the problem is, if all of a sudden everybody who's left their gold on deposit with the Federal Reserve comes by and says, hey, we want it, well, the whole Ponzi scheme collapses, because that initial ounce that they lent 100 ounces against now no longer exists, which makes those 100 contracts even more fictitious than they were when they were sold. So no wonder the Federal Reserve, no wonder the London banks are kind of dragging their feet over these requests to repatriate the gold. They need that gold to keep their Ponzi scheme up. Thought it was over, didn't you? The United States of America signed and ratified the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which reads in part, no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, whether a state of war or a threat of war, internal political instability, or any other public emergency, may be invoked as a justification for torture. Yes, the United States signed that treaty. And when other nations act with impunity and torture people, the United States is very quick to wag their finger at them and say, oh, you're naughty, naughty, naughty. But the United States has been caught red-handed having tortured people with impunity. Now, The big excuse, oh, these are evil Arabs, and they're probably terrorists. We think they're terrorists. Somebody said they might have been a terrorist. Somebody said they might have seen him doing something that was terrorist. And Jack Bauer did it on 24, so it's got to be okay, you know. And besides that, Obama gave everybody who was involved in this nonsense immunity way back when. So what's the big deal about it? I mean, you know, it's over with. It's what are we worried about now? It's ancient history, right? No. The United States is still doing it to this day. The terrible thing is, the only thing you're going to get from torture is a confession. I guarantee you. You waterboard me for about 30 seconds, and I will confess to, you know, bringing down the Hindenburg, sinking the Lusitania, assassinating Kennedy, whatever. I mean, whatever you want, I'll confess to. Yes, anything. Just stop waterboarding me. I think I would last for about 30 seconds. You know, whatever you want, I'll confess to. Yeah, I did it. I kidnapped the Lindbergh baby. You know, I assassinated Lincoln. Yeah, sure, no problem. What else do you want me to confess to? I did it all. No known actionable intelligence has been derived from these acts of terrorism that our government would have you believe is nothing more than just an enhanced interrogation. Look, it's BS, okay? Are we going to be able to do anything about it? No, the United States will not be able to do anything about it because our president has already given the perpetrators immunity. George Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, they've all been given immunity by Obama. And in turn, whoever replaces Obama is sure to give Obama immunity for all the nasty deeds that is how it's done in the United States in the 21st century. Is that how you thought your country was supposed to be run? Is that what you voted for? And the United States is fighting to keep photographs of some of the more disgusting terrorist activities from being released. They don't want the photographs released. And, you know, they've tortured these people. They have committed acts of absolute terrorism against individuals. The pictures include an image of a female soldier allegedly pretending to sodomize a naked prisoner with a broom. Some of the stuff is just absolutely disgusting. It would advocates of CIA torture demand, charge them or let them go. Free my people. Oh, for crying out loud. People that should be in jail. People that should be in a 6x9 with a roommate named Bubba who thinks they're pretty. Are living high on your tax dollars. Don't you just love it? Hey, it's that time. I'm out of here, y'all. We'll see you next Tuesday, and we will do some more barking at the moon. Y'all have a good week, what's left of it. Take care now. Good night. Yeah, I know. Done already? Hey, did you hear the latest? Yeah, I gotta get this one. I missed it during the broadcast, but you know I just can't let a good piece of Obamacare news go by because you know how much I just love Obamacare. Yeah, the numbers just came out today. 2.5 million enrollees have signed up for Obamacare now. 2.5 million. Wait a minute. Last count, I thought there was about 320 million in the United States. Probably another 40 million or so illegals, but there were 300 that actually signed 300 million that signed a census. So 2.5 million, less than 1%. Less than 1% of the population. Well, when you think about it, okay, now let's be realistic now. Of that 320 million, there's really only about 90 million working Americans. Yeah, it's less than 1 in 3. There's one guy out there who's working like a dog to pull his own weight and pull the weight of about, 2.4 others. Yeah, that's how it is here in the United States. You got one poor working schmuck out there who's pulling his weight plus the weight of at least 2 more. So, out of the 90 million wage earners, those who actually file taxes and pay taxes. So, of them, 2.5 million represents, about 2.5–3%. so 2.5–3% of the population, of the tax-paying population, has actually now signed up for Obamacare. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Officials did not say whether the numbers would be available. They received more than 3 million unique users. Auto renewal customers may see their premiums rise due to plan changes. Yeah, they're still changing the plans around. Increasing deductibles, reducing what gets covered. Administration officials stressed Tuesday that customers will have until open enrollment closing date February 15th to make changes if they are surprised by their bill. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by their bill. They're going to have to decide, do I get health care or do I pay my mortgage? I can't afford to do both. Gotta love it. Got to love it. Here's why banks care about getting Dodd-Frank, gutting Dodd-Frank. The advantage, the depository units with implicit government backing are considered less risky than parent holding companies. Okay, let's explain this. A depository is a bank's unit that holds customer deposits. But now they have redefined yes, get used to it. You are no longer a depositor at the bank. You are now an unsecured investor. Yes, when you deposit money in a U.S. bank, you are no longer depositing anything. You are investing in the bank. You're an unsecured investor. You don't get a note. You don't get a certificate. You don't get stock. You just hand your money to the bank, and as soon as that transaction is done, that money belongs to the bank. They can do with it what they damn well please. They can put it into risky investments that they hope are going to have a high yield, a high return, but they're not required to show fiduciary responsibility for a depositor's interest in that money. It used to be they were, and that's why the deposit division of a bank had a higher bond rating than the investment entity of the bank. So if you're a big bank like Citibank, you've got 2 different business units. You've got one business unit whose business it is to accept deposits from depositors, securely hold those deposits, make sure that customer's transactions get fed through the system appropriately. You may collect a small fee for those transactions if it's a checking account or something like that. On a savings account or a certificate of deposit, you're expected to pay a modest amount of interest. That was the original depository bank. Your investment bank might take large chunks of money from like a pension fund or something and manage an investment for which you get paid a fee for manipulating their money, and hopefully you invest wisely and produce a return for this entity that's investing. Well, those two units have become blurred in recent years since Glass-Steagall became a dinosaur and became extinct. Now, this Dodd-Frank amendment put some of the teeth back in it, but didn't really go anywhere nearly as far as Glass-Steagall did. But now they even want to gut Dodd-Frank, and they want there to be little, if any, distinction between a depository bank and an investment bank. The law states right now that money you deposit with a bank here could get cypressed, okay? If the bank fails, they can quite literally make themselves whole by taking your money. No longer do they have a fiduciary responsibility to protect your money. That money is now theirs to do with as they please. And if they lose it in a risky investment, you, as an investor, got to take your lumps. Get used to it. Or get your money out of the banks. It's that simple. If you don't like it, get your money out of the banks. Yesterday. Did you know? Did you know? I bet some of you out there probably know. Some of you out there have probably looked at your own finances and have figured this out for yourself. The Great Recession is officially over. Yeah, everything's cool now. Everything's cool now. The banks are making lots of money. So why aren't you? It's all your fault. You know, the Great Recession is officially over, but Americans are still 40% poorer today than they were in 2007, the year before the global financial crisis. The net worth of American families, the difference between the value of their assets, including their home investments, as opposed to their liabilities, fell to $81,400 in 2013, down slightly from 82, but a long way off the $135,000 it was in 2007. According to a new report released by Pew, the Great Recession, fueled by the crisis in the housing and financial markets, was universally hard on the net worth of American families, except for the 1%. They're better off now than they've ever been. Their holdings are up more than 40%. So there has been a tremendous transfer of wealth from average middle-class Americans to that upper 1%. You lost 40% of your net worth since 2007. But the big shots, they more than increased their holdings 40%. Their holdings have increased more than 40%. So you wonder where your money went? You wonder who the enemy of us all are, whether we are black, white, green, pink, purple, or blue? Do you wonder who the enemy of us all are? Do you wonder why they want the black man poking at the white man, and they want the white man poking at the brown man? Why they want the brown man? You wonder why they want us all just, fighting and fussing against each other? Because they really don't want us to stop and think who the real enemy of us all is. Because if we ever stopped and thought about it, we wouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves. That black man would have your back. That brown man, he'd be walking point. And you'd be out hunting them sons of bitches. Yeah! But nah, you're very easily manipulated. And you like to sit back and watch Dancing with the Stars and drink a nice beer, Why do you want to get, why do you want to stop and think stuff that gives you a headache? Where is the outrage? Where is the outrage? This is a nice article. It's actually quite well written. Do you remember where you were 6 years ago? Probably not. Actually, I do. I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I know where I was 6 years ago. It was a long time ago, December 2008. It's not one of those dates that get burned into your brain like the moon landing or D-Day. But I remember where I was. I was at my post office. In December 2008, the number of jobs shrank by more than 500,000. The worst monthly loss in more than 30 years. Construction permits fell by more than 12% as people stopped buying homes and retailers got a giant lump of coal from consumers. It's happening again this year. Congress has passed. The president has signed what he would sign, a budget bill that allows banks to use your savings when they make giant financial bets called derivatives. Again, yeah. Yeah, that's another article about this derivatives issue where, you are now on the hook for derivatives. Some say there might be as much as 4.5 quadrillion. Now, I don't know. I've heard estimates 4.5 quadrillion. I've heard estimates 1.2 quadrillion. Doesn't matter, man. When you start talking trillions of dollars, that's a lot of freaking zeros, okay? And I can't count to 1 trillion on my fingers. It just don't work. When you start talking quadrillions of dollars, that is a number with more zeros than a poor old country boy with straw for brains can comprehend. Some say that the bank's exposure on these derivatives contracts might be in excess of at least $1 quadrillion. It might be 4.5 quadrillion. They have managed to get a Congress who is in their pocket to pass a bill that now puts the FDIC on the hook for their losses in the derivatives market. That's like if MetLife sold you a life insurance policy for $100,000. You got hit by a metro bus tomorrow. Your wife goes to MetLife and say, hey, he had this policy, pay up. And MetLife says, oh, we haven't got the money. We've got to go to the FDIC and get them to guarantee the loan. That way it's spread out among all the taxpayers. That's what they did. They make a risky investment. They buy some sort of a derivative contract as an insurance policy against their failing on this risky investment. So now they've got a risky investment that they stand to lose, and somebody has a derivative contract that they stand to lose. And now you, Mr. U.S. taxpayer, are on the hook for the derivatives via this vehicle known as the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Now, much has been said about the FDIC. Last count, they had about $40 billion in reserves, okay? So if the little mom and pop's bank that you're doing business with goes upside down tomorrow, the FDIC probably has enough in their reserves to cover depositors who are no longer even depositors. They're now investors, which relieves the FDIC from any responsibility for your investment. Back when it was a deposit, see, it's Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Well, now you're no longer a depositor. So your money is no longer guaranteed by the FDIC. But the FDIC has been charged with guaranteeing the derivatives on behalf of the big banks. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't that just sweet? So no matter how bad the economy goes, our friends on Wall Street will not lose. You will. I think I've had enough of this nonsense for one night. What do you guys think? With all this doom and gloom, are you feeling it? Hey, did you hear this last one? I gotta talk about this. It appears. Where is that article? Oh, did I lose it? Oh, I think I lost that article. Oh, that's a shame. But it appears that Curiosity rover on Mars. It appears that the Curiosity rover actually smelt something fart on Mars. There may be life on Mars, and apparently it has gas. Yeah, no, this report just came out. There will be links, in the about portion of this video. If you're looking at this on YouTube, you'll be able to get the links on YouTube, or you can get it from smartscarecrow.com. Find the blog entry for December 16th, 2014. But there is a little bit of methane in the atmosphere in Mars, but apparently Curiosity was in an area that was suspicious. It was an area that kind of looked like there might be a chance of them finding something that was alive in this area, and it was kind of poking around and it was sniffing, and the parts per billion of methane all of a sudden spiked. It was hovering right around normal, what they expect to find in the Martian atmosphere. All of a sudden it jumped up like many, many, many times what it normally would be. And it's like all of a sudden Curiosity rolled over somebody's septic tank or something. But, apparently there's a very high probability that life has been proven to exist on the surface of Mars. Stay tuned to that one. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of people are scared of this, particularly the really whacked out Muslims and the really whacked out Christians. I mean, the ones who think God created the earth in the blink of an eye, and that only the earth supports life, and that we are unique in the universe. A lot of people will be really, really, really offended by this if it is proven and it is a real discovery. But many of us find it to be a very hopeful sign. It's a sign that, if we really, 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 really do damage and or destroy this particular planet to such a degree that humans can no longer live here, there is a high probability that we will find life-sustaining planets elsewhere in the nearby neighborhood that we might be able to retreat to. So, it's a double-edged sword. I realize that a lot of folks out there will find this to be, oh, absolutely shocking. God created only us, and we're unique in the universe and all that. Others will, yeah, man. Some say that, in fact, the Viking spacecraft that landed on Mars back in the 70s discovered that there was life on the surface of Mars, but for political reasons, that discovery was set aside. On that one, I don't know. You're gonna have to think about that one for a while. Make up your own damn mind. All right, that's it. That was all of my planned presentations for the evening. I will now address the august group in the chat room and see what you guys have got to say. What hot news items did I just absolutely miss today? Ever wonder why there's very little on the moon that's of interest? A couple things that make the moon interesting would be as a weapons platform and surveillance platform. Now, there's always the possibility that there may be military reasons for going to the moon. But the problem with going to the moon is that everything you need to survive you have to take with you. They have recently discovered what appears to be water, at least at the south pole of the moon, so there might be a little bit of water there. But the environment of the moon is so damned harsh that everything you would need to survive, all your fuel, air, food, everything, you got to take with you. On Mars, it's not quite as bad, and the life support systems that you would require to survive an indefinite period on Mars are not nearly as expensive or as exhaustive. So, Mars, even though it's a longer trip, it takes a little longer to get there, there's a better chance of long-term habitation on Mars. The reasons to go to the moon would primarily be military. We want to be there to have a launching platform so we could hit somebody on the Earth quickly. We want to be able to spy on everybody. There's good military reasons. 60 rare cars untouched for 50 years. I got to open this link up and take a look at this. That might, before it's news. Okay, I got, where is it? Let's see, here we go. I'm seeing all this before it's news stuff, but, you know, I tend not to trust before it's news for obvious reasons. You know, let's see. I want to see the pictures of all these cool cars. You know, where's all the, oh, okay, I think I finally found it. Oh, wow. Wow. Old T-Bird. What is that? Is that a Bentley? Antique Bentley in there? Holy cow. Wow. That's quite the collection. Antique Mercedes. God only knows what that. I see an old Porsche, bathtub Porsche. And what the heck is a farmer doing with a collection of cars like this? Or was this an antique junkyard of some kind? I mean, these are some, boy, none of them, I would say, are in particularly good condition. I mean, these, boy, they're a long way from museum ready, but yeah, that's quite the discovery. I'm looking at an article at Gizmag about somebody has discovered an old garage that has like 60 old antique. Oh, one of them is a Ferrari 250 GT. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Oh Lord, pretty cool. All right, what did I miss, guys? What did I miss? What hot item in the news did I miss? Those cars are in France, huh? Okay, cool. Tell you, I'm not getting much feedback from my audience tonight. You guys all fall asleep? Yeah, I think the audience has fallen asleep. There's still quite a few of you hanging out there, so, you know. Oh, everybody has stopped and is taking a look at all these old cars. The father owned a truck building factory. He had 100 cars, but was forced to sell some of them off. Yeah, I saw a Bentley, a Bugatti, and a Porsche in there. I saw those, yeah. I saw some that I couldn't even describe them. Thanks for asking, Tommy. Yes, there will be a special presentation of the Smart Scarecrow Show this coming Saturday. The show will start at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to be doing the Pulse Motor Build-Off Special presentation. It should be a lot of fun. That particular presentation has been a lot of fun over the years. I think I've done at least 2 of them. And, you know, it's time for me to put my Smart Scarecrow hat back on and do the Pulse Motor Build-Off special presentation. So, yeah, I will start tweeting about that probably about noonish on Saturday to remind folks. So if you have Twitter, if you're a regular Twitter user and you add Smart Scarecrow to your Twitter feed, you'll probably start seeing tweets from me about noontime reminding you to get ready that there will be a show that evening. What went down 6%? I didn't see that. What went down 6% tonight? The Russian ruble? The Russian ruble's in a tailspin. But I wouldn't count the ruble out. The government did confiscate gold back in the 1930s. So, you know, those of you who hold gold as a store of wealth for yourself, the federal government here in the United States made it illegal for private parties to possess gold bullion during the 1930s. And there is a possibility. Keep in mind, it was illegal for you to own gold right up until the 1980s. Okay, as recently as the 1980s. A lot of you youngsters out there don't realize this, but I think it was right until the 1980s. You were not allowed to own gold if you were just, a commoner, a peasant. Now, if you was one of the uppas, you could get away with it. But, you commoners were not allowed to. Oh, that was the king's money. And you were only allowed to earn the currency of the day. But yeah, could it happen here? Could. I haven't heard of any widespread. Now, they'll use this civil forfeiture thing to take anything they want. I mean, they'll take your car, they'll take your Rolex watch, they'll take whatever cash you got in your pocket. They will claim that this inanimate object was involved in some criminal activity and put you in a position where you have to prove that it was not to get it back. And by the time you pay attorneys, what they love to grab chunks of change that are right at the threshold of pain. See, if they came to me and took $5,000 from me, I'd be pissed. I'd be cussing. I'd be wanting to go out hunting somebody. But, I'd go and I'd talk to my attorney, and my attorney would say, yeah, we can take these guys to court, and we can get you $5,000 back, but it's going to cost you $2,500 to get your $5,000 back. And I'd scratch my head, and I'd go back to these thieves, and I'd say, okay, you sons of bitches, if you give me half of my money back, I won't sue your ass. And they'll think about it, and they'll say, well, if he sues us, it's going to cost him $2,500 to get his $500 back. He's going to end up with $2,500. We're going to wind up with nothing. So if we just split it with him right now, it's a win-win situation. He gets half his money back, and we get to keep half of what we stole from him. So, that's how these civil forfeiture things work. Now, if they happen to get somebody for a lot of money, and if they came to me and they stole $100,000 from me, now that's a whole different story. That's a whole different story. It cost me about the same to sue them. It's going to cost me about $2,500, maybe $3,000 to sue them. So you betcha I'd go after the sons of bitches. So, you got to pick your battles carefully. And the cops know this. So they love to nick you for just a little bit. If you got $1,000 of your vacation money, cash in your pocket, you're on your way down 95 to go to Florida on vacation, and you get pulled over 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, and, they find your $1,000 vacation money. They just grab it and say, oh, this was obviously going to be drug proceeds, What are you going to do? You're going to pay $2,500 to sue them to get $1,000 back? No. You're going to say, damn you, you son of a bitch, and you're going to put your vacation on your credit card. What else are you going to do? These civil forfeiture laws, which were originally put in place, in theory, to go after, the drug dealers and so forth, everybody was like, yeah, go kick those drug dealers' ass. No. Nowadays, they're used against average common citizens. As a matter of fact, Canada posts warnings for Canadians who want to come visit the United States to be real careful about paying cash, because they say the cops in the United States are crazy. And if they find any cash on you at all, they're going to use any excuse to take it away from you. Yes, the government could pass a law tomorrow saying that you're no longer allowed to own gold. Could happen. Well, you don't sue for violation of constitutional rights. You have to get a prosecutor to go after on that one. You can get a class action suit together if you can get enough people, but there's no way you can bring a civil suit for violation of constitutional rights. That one you actually have to find a prosecutor who is willing to prosecute. That's the trouble with a lot of this stuff. It's selective enforcement. They choose not to prosecute those who, it's like Eric Holder. I mean, Eric Holder should be in a 6x9 with Bubba, okay? But, as the boss of the Justice Department, he got a pass. They have chosen not to prosecute him, even though he obviously conducted illegal activities with regards to the Fast and Furious scandal and so many others. You know, George Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld are obviously guilty of war crimes. Kissinger is obviously guilty of war crimes. The United States is protecting people who are worse than the Nazis. And yet, you know, we give them a pass. We give them a kiss on the cheek. We give them a government pension. Well, some say that the Constitution is only enforced when it's to the benefit of the enforcers. In theory, this is still a constitutional republic. I'm not so sure because I think the United States was reorganized as a corporate entity in the 1930s during the period of bankruptcy when the United States actually did indeed go bankrupt. I think the United States that was formed under the Constitution was reorganized as USA Inc. about that time, and that now it's the true governance of the United States. It's being run like a corporation. We transitioned from a constitutional republic to a fascist dictatorship. It's been a fairly slow transition. They didn't want to hit you in the side of the head too fast because they want you to still feel patriotic and still feel like, you know, you do indeed have rights. I believe at this point your rights are indeed an illusion. The only reason that they suffer you those rights is because it's convenient and to their advantage. And in truth, they are privileges that can, at a whim, be taken away. That's the way they view it. Now, you only have those rights. You will only ever have those rights that you are willing to fight and die for. Now, that's a sad state. I mean, you would think that you have these unalienable rights just by your existence, just by the fact that you were born. I am alive, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. I'm a free person. In your mind, that's what you are. As far as rights, warlords going back 10, 15, 20,000 years have always sought to subjugate the masses. They consider you a force multiplier. Me on my own, I can only do such. But if I can organize 1,000 people under me, I can get at least that much more done. Therefore, my manifest destiny is to control as large a population of weaker sons of bitches as I can, organize them into a cohesive unit, and do the best I can to go beat up on the warlord across the river and take his stuff. Okay? That is human nature. That's how systems get organized. If you really, really, really think you have rights, you had best be willing to fight and perhaps die for them. Those are the only rights you're really entitled to. Any right that you're not willing to fight and die to keep can and will be taken from you by somebody with a big club or a little more testosterone than you have. Sorry, but that's the way it is. We organized a government, in 1776 with the intention that it would be the government's responsibility to protect and maintain our rights. We see what happened. It devolved, and that too is human nature. People talk about all these isms. They talk about, capitalism is so much better than communism. Yeah, they're all isms. None of them is better or worse, whether you lived in a capitalist system or a communist system or whatever. The end result would be the same. You would have less so that those at the top of the pyramid could have more. The capitalist system ensures that. The communist system ensures that. There will always be a small group at the top and a large bulk at the bottom, and those of us at the bottom are not members of the club, as George Carlin would say. So, as you start wagging your finger at those commies and those socialists and all these other, actually, looking at it right now, I mean, of all the isms that are out there, socialism looks like the most responsible system for ensuring, the rights of average people and ensuring that average people do reasonably well. I'm not a big fan of socialism, but, of all the isms that are out there, that's the one that seems to work the best for the most people. I can tell you right now that, capitalism inherently devolves into fascism, which is where we're at today. Well, I'm not sure that they're going to restore the Constitution, Maury. Actually, a constitutional convention scares me to death. See, here's the problem. We've got a constitution, okay? But this government chooses to ignore it. What makes you think that if 3/4 of the states get together and hold a new con, that whatever constitution they come up with, the government is going to adhere to then? I mean, if you cannot get them to adhere to what we got right now, what makes you think they're going to adhere to anything else? So, a constitutional convention, I mean, that gives them the opportunity to tear up the old one, start from scratch, and put something on the table that they like better. You think you're going to get some say? And what goes into the new the Constitution we've got right now, although it is a flawed document, it's far from perfect. Okay? It's probably one of the best contracts between a population and its government that's yet been devised by human beings. I know of no contractual agreement between the population and its government. I know of none better than the Constitution we have right now. So even though it is a terribly flawed document, if our government would adhere to the contract with the people that it already has in place, we'd have a much better nation than what we have right now. Putting a new contract on the table, not with this group of, no. No, I'm afraid, our only hope, I think our only hope at this point is the colonels. I think the generals are already so corrupted that, we can't, we don't have any George Pattons out there. The generals are totally corrupt. I think our only hope right now is an honorable group of colonels willing to take it down, tear it up, reorganize it, and then give it back to the people. Yeah, a military overthrow of the current government is about the only chance we've got. Those who are in power will use that power to maintain that power. They are not going to give up. They're not going to go gracefully. If we all stand up and say, hey, you're fired, they're going to say, screw you. I'm in. You can't do nothing about it. I'll send my guys in Darth Vader outfits for you. And they come after us one at a time. Okay? So they knock on your neighbor's door and they grab him one night, and you stand there going, holy shit, that could be me. And the next night it is you. And the other neighbor's going to be standing, holy shit, it could be me. The night after that, they come for him. Okay? That's how it's done. They're not going to give you the opportunity to go against them in force. They will use the fact that we are timid and not willing to stand in defense of our neighbor. They will use that against us. That's how it's done. Machiavelli, the prince. Read it and weep. You're seeing it action. You're seeing it in action. The learned elders of Zion. Read it and weep. You're seeing it played out in real time. Now, these are, I think The Prince was written back in the 1600s, late something like that, 1700s. The learned elders of Zion, they wrote their thesis. It was originally seen, I think, in the 1800s. It might have been written as early as the 13 or 1400s. It's an Illuminati wet dream, but we're seeing it played out. So they brag about it. They know how to screw you over. They're going to get you. Oh God, yes, another Bush. Yeah, and here's they're talking about a Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush. But I was predicting that months ago. I was talking that 2016 was probably going to be Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush. I mean, okay, so flip a coin. Let's see. Do I vote for shit or do I vote for manure? Oh boy, yeah. We've got our royalty now. You get to choose between your royal families. Yeah. This is not the United States that we thought it was. It's not the United States we were taught in government class. I'll tell you that. Well, I think I've about had enough, guys. I'll tell you, unless there's one more really hot topic that we need to discuss, I think I'm going to bag it. Is there anything else really, really hot? Any hot items in the news that I missed? Any hot items that we need to discuss? All righty, going once, going twice. All righty, hey, I'm very pleased that you decided to spend your Tuesday evening listening to me bark at the moon, as if anybody out there was really listening or gave a shit. Yeah, hot babes in Florida. Yeah, Elizabeth Warren. She's another politician. I mean, she talks a good talk, but she don't walk the walk. She was playing her part. She was playing her part. I think I've had it, guys. I'm out of here. Thank you so much for spending your Tuesdays with me. We'll be back next Tuesday. We'll do some more barking at the moon. And if you'd like to join us for the Pulse Motor Build-Off Special, try to keep, early evening on Saturday available. We'll be broadcasting that presentation about 7 p.m. Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern U.S. time. Yes, I will record it, and yes, we will post it up to YouTube for anybody who just absolutely cannot watch it live. We'll set it up for YouTube so that you can watch it as a rerun. But for now, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good evening. See you Saturday, and if you can't make the Saturday presentation, see you next Tuesday.
Ooh, the love of the turnarounds. None of us are leaving here alive. Whoa, what will you say? What will you say? And what will you do? What will you do? What will you do? Oh, I'm calling out to you. Won't you turn around? Oh, I'm calling out to you. Won't you turn around? Oh, the point of no return is just ahead now.